gentlemen, please welcome to the stage South Tyneside's teenage rock and roll machine, Mr. Lee Kyle.
Hello, hiya. Welcome to my show, the second of my isolation tour shows. Shows written in a month, this time of week I was busy. Written in a month, recorded in my house for you, the discerning comedy viewer who understands that they should judge these things differently than they would a normal show that's had loads of previews. What was this show going to be called, Lee? It was going to be called Tank Fly, Boss Walk, Jam, Nitty Gritty, You Listen to the Boy from South Tyneside. This is Lee Kyle. This is Lee Kyle. Until I tried to put that title as a title of a Facebook video and an event, and they wouldn't have it. It was too long. And also when I found out that anyone younger than the age of about 35 had no real memory of that song existing. Not even the relatively recent Professor Green cover. That's Showbiz Greeno. So I have changed it. It is now called South Tyneside's Teenage Rock and Roll Machine. South Tyneside's Teenage Rock and Roll Machine. Because that's one of many nicknames I've tried to give myself over the years. I've always been a fan of giving myself nicknames. I love it like when people do that. Someone will walk into school one day and they go, yeah, everyone's calling us fucking Sexy Paul now. And you go, they're not Paul. They're not Paul. No, they are calling us Sexy Paul. They're not Paul. That's one of mine. I've had other ones over the year. I used to be a wrestler, right? I haven't got time to talk about that really. I've got a back catalogue. I've got some stuff at patreon.com/Lee Kyle. I've got a whole show about it. When I was a wrestler, I used to call myself the biggest heel since Ian Beale, which is quite nice. Heel is wrestling slang for a bad guy, and Ian Beale is a character on EastEnders who was quite bad, but also his name rhymed with heel. I was also called Christian Slater's favourite wrestler, trying to get that one to catch on, because I once wrestled at a show where Christian Slater was. That's weird already, isn't it? And he did the coolest thing I've ever seen anybody do. He was there afterwards talking to two girls, right? Oh, Christian. And then he didn't have any sunglasses on. That's important. He didn't have any sunglasses on. And then he went like this. And he had sunglasses on, and I'm his favourite wrestler in that he was in a room with us. I tried to get the following going last year. Which is, I wanted to call myself Britain's best unsigned comedian. That's a good idea, that, isn't it? In the hope that all of the agencies would have a massive bidding war and be like, well, we've got to get him to stop them getting him. He has £46 million, still waiting on it. So I've tried to rebrand now, and I'm now calling myself England's best comedian. It's good, that, isn't it? It's a good idea, right? Because anyone who understands will go, oh, he's being ironic. But it's also pissing off some people who think I'm just making a grandiose claim. But I'm hoping it'll also fool some people and they're going, oh, he's the best. Fucking hell, he must be good. I'll check that out. Clever. Speaking of being Britain's best unsigned comedian, by the way. I've just been on the website of prestigious comedy agency Avalon, and it just occurred to me that I'm not on there. So I'm really embarrassed. Avalon, look, honestly, are you mental? Right? I'm England's best comedian, and you're like, oh, I'll just have a roster of comedians. Who isn't on it? Have we got the best comedian in England? No. Look, Avalon, right? Here's the fucking thing. I just gives a shout. We'll make something happen. I'm England's best comedian, so you just make us like fucking £86 million. And I'll give you a little bit. It's just embarrassing I'm not bothered myself, like, I'll do myself, but it's embarrassing for you, isn't it? When you're having to go to America and they go, oh, who have you got on your roster? And have you got the best comedian in England? And they're like, no. Fuck you, man. You know, but I'm not doing the pleasants. You're not supposed to be in an echo chamber these days. That's what they tell you, aren't they? Like, your social media, it's got to reflect all points of view. Bollocks! I'm on Twitter in my spare time. It's not my job. I don't have to go on there and go, nah, I must really find out the alternative points of view with a load of fake cunts who are wrong. I don't have to. There's no possible echo chamber when you're on the left anyway. You can't avoid racism now that it's gone mainstream again. And I don't believe the people on the right are doing that either. They're happy in their little echo chamber. I don't believe there's loads of NF people going, you know what? I've had me fill of not surrendering to the IRA today. I think I'll read it on some feminist blogs. You know, maybe I've been wrong all these years. And they're proper soft babies, a lot of them, aren't they? Like, they're good with their fists, but oh, they've got no emotional control. Pathetic, man. They're always going, oh, you can't joke about anything these days. You can't make jokes. No, you can't, because you're shit. Decent comics, you can make jokes about anything. What you have to do is think about what you're saying and not just be a prick on purpose. Oh, these are soft. We're not. We're not. The left wing are less soft, really, because we're the ones who are going, actually, stop being a prick. To people who could beat us up with their fists. Every comedian I've ever known who's made a point of walking off after like 3 or 4 minutes when the crowd aren't immediately behind their obvious shit turned out to be men's rights activists. Oh, women are pathetic, aren't they? They're not fucking tough like me. Yeah, well, I've seen fucking lasses, twee lasses on stage in rough social clubs, and they've done 20 minutes, no fucking bother, and they've won the crowd round. Oh, but not you, not you. They didn't immediately agree that women are shit. I'm off. Fucking hell, grow up. I know what you're thinking, some ears. See one of these snowflakes? Bollocks. No, I'm not offended. I'm not easily offended. I used to compare the hyena, for fuck's sake. I got glass thrown at us once and I stayed on. Come on. I'm not easily offended. I don't believe we're always easily offended. I think we tend to be bored or embarrassed or furious at you for existing. The right, that's the problem. And another problem is I've spent loads of my life trying not to make enemies, and it's only recently I've realised, yeah, some people need to be someone with more enemies, so yeah, I'll be it. If you're the sort of person who needs an enemy because you're a prick, I'll be it. And I can't be in an echo chamber. I grew up in Jarrow. I've moved to South Shields, next town along, just different council flats. What's Jarrow like? That's what this show's about. What's Jarrow like? What's South Shields like? What's South Tyneside like? Well, Jarrow, if I can give you a quick flavour, there was a snooker club in the 90s in Jarrow called On Cue. And at On Cue snooker club in Jarrow in the 1990s, you could buy a pint of the runoff of the drip tray for 25 pence. And it's not until I started doing comedy and went to more places that I realised not only is that disgusting, but that's fucking cheap, innit? Moved along to South Shields when I got a bit older. My family genuinely thought I'd gone a bit la-di-da. Lived in a bedsit for a while. Lived in a bedsit when they sold a flat out of us when I was 19. Moved into a bedsit where there was a man in there who I had to move out because one morning I woke my eyes and he was just stood up from my bed watching. And I thought, gotta get out of here before the spunk starts flying. And I moved into a place called Leggett in South Shields. Leggett in South Shields. On my first night there, I was robbed for me fish and chips at knife point. I remember the conversation going, give us your chips. And me going, nah, I want me chips. And then pulling a knife out and me going, enjoy your chips. And then I walked up to our flat and there was blood dribbling down the stairs, very same night. And the somewhat friendly bloke who lived opposite said, don't worry about the blood, mate, we just had to stab some fucker earlier, so I'm not so much in an echo chamber. For example, my hero, when I was a kid, my first ever hero as a kid, before Kevin Keegan or anything, was a bloke called Tommy the Tramp. Now, I know you don't say tramp, I get that, even though I think it's quite a lovely evocative word, tramp, just walking around having a lovely time, but you don't say, but at the time I didn't know what the tramp meant. I just thought it was his name. Tommy, though, there's Tommy the Tramp. I was like a little kid, you know, 3 or 4 years old. And I was like, there's Tommy the Tramp. And I loved Tommy the Tramp because what Tommy the Tramp would do, he would go around, knock on every door in the streets and he would sing a little song. That's nice, isn't it? And I used to look forward to it, and people would give him £1 and he'd come round and he'd sing, see you later, alligator, in a wild crocodile, and my granny would give him £1 and I thought, that is brilliant. I went to his house, not his house, right, it wasn't a house, but he did have a sort of setup near one of the rivers, near the River Don. He had a sort of setup made out of boxes. I remember going in once, which really, as a small child, who was letting us in, but I did go in, and he's very kind. He said, and this is the earliest memory I've got of any adult talking to us, and he said, do you want a bean, son? Do you want a bean? And I mean, I didn't take one. It's a single cold bean offered from a stranger. It was weird, but it's very kind, you know. He died. He died a few years after that, Tommy. He'd had a hard life. You know, he'd had drink problems, he's homeless, and man cannot live on bean alone. He'd had a hard life, but I always remember him. I've thought about him every day since. Well, I didn't think about him for like 20 years, then I had to write a show, but I thought about him every day for the last week. When I think about it, he was my first hero, and I think he's a good role model. And when I think about it, you look at Tommy the Tramp, and you think, God, as a kid, I remember thinking, I'd like to grow up just like him. Just like him, you know. Travelling around the country in a semi-transitory style, doing poor quality entertainment for not much money. I'm living my childhood dream. I heard some people on the metro once, which is like a train in South Tyneside, but stinks. And they said, where are you from? To us, another person there, and he said, I'm from Jarrow. And this bloke summed up Jarrow perfectly for me. He said, oh, Jarrow, yeah. Have you ever noticed that everybody in Jarrow's up to something? And that's absolutely true. I hadn't thought about it, but my whole childhood was that. People doing backy runs to Calais, or people doing side jobs, or hiding next to the window because the provvy had come round. It's just the normal way of life there. I hadn't even thought of it as weird until I was a bit older. I remember there was a big argument as a kid, right? A big argument where I just couldn't believe a slightly posher kid once. And what had happened is, it was a very clever thing we used to say as kids when you'd go, is that your house over there? And maybe like Matthew Dockery or Chris Trevor, one of your friends would go, yeah? And you'd go, no it isn't. It's the council's. And you go, oh shit, it is the council's. And I tried this on a kid from outside of the area. And I said, is that your house? And he said, yeah. And I said, it isn't. It's the council's. And he said, no, we do own it. And I don't think until I was 12 I was even aware of the concept of owning a house. The main rule we live by as a kid is never grass on someone on the fiddle. Now I don't know how widespread the word fiddle is, whether it's a northern word, I don't really know. So the fiddle is when you're signing on and having a side job, right? It's not like, oh, never tell the law on Nigel Kennedy. And it's only when I started getting a bit older and you'd see certain newspapers that I realised a lot of people regard these people as the enemy of society. And that's fucking bollocks, isn't it? Because it's the whole thing about the poor being turned on the poor by the rich. And South Shields was described by a friend of mine. He said, thing about South Shields is it's like an island. And it's not, South Shields isn't an island, but there's no reason to come to it unless you're going to South Shields. If you're travelling from Newcastle to Sunderland, say, you'd go via Gateshead. There's no reason to go to South Shields unless you are specifically going to South Shields. So it means it's a sort of enclosed community, and it's sort of its own little petri dish community, and it is a very strange place, I think. It's the sort of place that was described by my mate as, if you go to a pub in South Shields, there's always a bloke there who will try to sell you a snuff film, and it is. It's got a real darkness to it as a place. I've always thought that. I've never seen what the point of snuff films are. I don't think that's a controversial view. I'm guessing most people here haven't watched one. I've never watched this. For many reasons. First off, I think it would make us sad. It would be the sort of image that stayed with you. Like the time I saw a two-headed dog when I was in Latvia that the Soviet government had put together. And then to see if two dogs could live off one heart. And it turns out they could for a few days. But then they had to put it down because the little dog that was attached to the back of the big dog started biting it. And that'll never leave me. I imagine a snuff film's like that. But also I would never watch one because, I mean, they're pretty predictable, aren't they? I can't imagine you sitting there with your popcorn in the snuff cinema going, shh, keep it down, man. I want to see how this one ends. But is South Shields a nice place to live? I can't quite like it. I googled it and they said, yeah, it's a favourite place to live because of the easy metro access to Newcastle. It makes us feel special. But there's a dark history. South Shields had what may well be Britain's first ever race riots in 1919. That's true, that, yeah. There was a big, from the 1800s, there was quite a big Yemeni and Somali and Bangladeshi community in, and everything was running along quite nicely. And incidentally, people from South Shields are often nicknamed sand dancers. And people assume it's because of the beach, but it's not. It's actually because of the large Yemeni population. So it's almost a racist term, really. So watch out for... People are surprised. If you ask them in South Shields, you go, do you know why we're called sand dancers? And they go, it's because of the beach. Like, we have got a beach, but it's not the most famous beach, you know. Like, you ask people around the world, you don't go, name a beach, family fortunes in different countries. Oh, we asked loads of people to name a beach. What beach did they say? They don't buzz in and go, well, it'll either be Copacabana, Venice Beach, or probably Marsden. Like, it's quite a nice beach, but we're not world renowned for our beach. It's after the Yemeni population, right? 1919, that was the first one. Race riots. The year of the Spanish flu, of course, 1919. And who would have thought there'd be a year where you had both race riots and a massive pandemic in the same year? They said it's not spontaneous. I always assumed it was. I assumed it was a spontaneous riot where loads of racists kicked off, and it wasn't quite that. You'd sympathise with the Yemenis, with the Somalis, with the Bangladeshis, who are people just trying to make a living. But what had happened is the Communist Party at the time in South Shields, don't get many votes now, at the time in South Shields, stood up for the ethnic minority people, and they said, yeah, they should get equal pay. That seems fair. But some of the unions, and I'm a big union guy, but this isn't really justifiable. They were furious. And it kicked off. Now, the Yemeni community, the Bangladeshi community, the Somali community had lots of support in South Shields, but it wasn't enough. There were, especially the 1931, that's the most publicised one. Very violent uprising. A lot of injuries, not many injuries in the white community, who caused it, of course. 6 people from the white community were arrested. Nobody got charged. They went to court, but they didn't get found guilty of anything, whereas 15 Arabs were deported or jailed because life isn't fair. I mean, I say that, obviously I've made all that up. Since there's no statute about it, there was absolutely no way for me to find any of that out. It was literally impossible for me to know that. There's no statutes about it anyway, so I just had to make it all up, obviously. I think the only way to teach history now, history's got to change, hasn't it? We can't just teach people out of books. You can't learn history out of books. You can only learn history out of statues now. Everybody knows that. So what I suggest, when the kids go back to school, cancel history lessons, extra craft lessons, right? Have all the kids make an individual 6-foot statue of Hitler to take home and put in their garden. It's the only way they'll remember he was a bad man. Don't worry, that was ironic, like Little Britain pretended to be when they were backing up. One very famous thing that happened that involved the Yemeni community, especially in South Shields, is one day Muhammad Ali visited just out of nowhere. The greatest, sings like a butterfly. No, the other one about a butterfly, what he did. Muhammad Ali came, right? Got his marriage blessed at the mosque in South Shields. It's nice, but also, can't help but think everyone I know who's had their marriage blessed or their vows renewed and been up to something. Ali, naughty, cheating on your wife, came in an open top bus. Of course he did. Muhammad Ali comes to South Shields in an open top bus. And I wonder how many decades it was since the last time he'd got a closed top bus. Maybe he thought all buses were open top by that point. Like really like famous people must just go, there's a fucking design flaw in these buses. I just put a roof on it, it's raining, I'm in South Shields. It's ridiculous. He came over for a boys club, a boxing club fundraiser. A fella called Johnny Walker wanted to raise some money for his desperately struggling boxing club for boys, you know, keep them out of trouble by teaching them how to punch people in the face, you know, boxing. So he flew over to Muhammad Ali's house, he'd never met the bloke, flew over, knocked on the door, because he wanted to raise money for his boxing club, so he spent many hundreds of pounds flying to America on a whim, with money that he could have used for his boxing. It doesn't make any sense, but he did. He came over and Muhammad Ali went, yeah, I like your chutzpah. So it worked out. Came over on his open top bus. Muhammad Ali had a lovely time, all told, right? All told. Went to the mosque, God bless, open top bus, met some people, did a bit of sparring. Brilliant. He said, I've never been so honoured. Direct quote that, I've never been so honoured, not even in America. Isn't that nice? Never came back. Never saw him again. I thought, why, if he liked it so much? Why then he came back? Then I realised that mosque where he got blessed, it's in Lagos, innit? I cannot believe some fucker's robbed the greatest at knife point for his fish and chips. Like, you might be hard, Mohammed, but you're not fucking tooled up, are you? By the way, speaking of fundraisers, what, don't kids grow up fast these days? I mean, mine's 106 now. He's not. It'll be stupid, it's just a little joke. He's 21, it's his birthday this week, but we're going to be going to Barcelona, but instead what we'll do is we'll stay in the house, just as good. Just as good. He, like me, used to go to school. I know. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, did it? He went to St. Joseph's Primary School in Felgate in Jarrow. And yeah, I'm going to talk about that because my worry about South Shields is while it's known as quite an integrated community after the riots, it's like everywhere, South Shields, Jarrow, has quite the undercurrent of racism. And Kia is, he's a quarter Yemeni. Right, I've got to explain, he's technically my stepson, his dad's half Yemeni, he's a quarter Yemeni. And in that school, what that meant is, before we had him removed from the school, he was bullied racially, but not even for being Yemeni. He was bullied for being the closest they had to a black kid, right? And Kia is someone who, where he an actor, he could play Italian, Middle Eastern, North African, Mexican at a push, not a black kid. The closest I had, got bullied. Terrible. He was 8 years old. We thought, we've got to take this to the school. Of course we do. They need to. Because he was being bullied by a kid much older than him, a kid who was 10 or 11 years old and much bigger than him, a big stocky kid who stood on his ribs. And even though those witnesses, we went in and spoke to the head teacher, who I will name. My name is Geraldine Egdell. Went in and spoke to the head teacher, who said, no, he wouldn't have done that. He's a lovely boy. And counteracted our Kia's being racially assaulted crack by saying, and actually we've got a problem with Kia in that he keeps going around school kissing a picture of David Tennant. Now I just don't think those things are equal. Call me a fudgy-dudgy, but I'm not sure that counteracts the racist assault. So just want to say to that kid, I don't remember your name, you're not important, that kid who's now 20, 21, oh, Kia's fucking cool as fuck, he's got dead good hair and he's flamboyant and a bit abrasive and that's his love him. How are you doing? Probably shit, probably got gout. I'm imagining he's got gout. Oh, how's your gout? You got so gout, you fucking rubbish dick. Oh, Mrs. Ectel, how are you enjoying your enforced early retirement that made you take a year after that? Look, I know some of this is seeming bitter, but it turns out I hold a grudge and you don't fuck with South Tyneside's teenage rock and roll machine. Get this, we used to call her Mrs. Egg Smell. It's not bad, that is it, because eggs would smell bad, wouldn't it? And we were against her, so we used a name as a sort of insult. Yeah, take that egg smell. Yeah! The problem I have with around here is the whole Geordiness and the Eon were canny, oh yeah, everyone's so lovely thing. I find it just a bit nauseating and patronising. I think people can use it against us, like every place, but it's full of different types of people. The South Shields Gazette tried to get a thing going for years where they'd refer to it, South Shields as canny shields. Now canny doesn't mean what it means in other parts of the country, as in tight with your money and careful. It means, oh no, look at them on, they're lovely. And it never caught on, canny shields. It's bollocks, isn't it? I have a problem with all of that unreal Geordie stuff that doesn't exist in real life. There's a picture, that's a famous South Shields picture, painted by a man called Bob Ollie, of a toilet. It's a picture of a toilet with some people in it, called the West O'Netty. I'll show you it now.
So this is the picture. I've often wondered what it is about the picture I don't like, because it's based on an old public toilet that's about 2 minutes walk from my house. There's a car wash there now, and I try to figure out what it is. I think it's probably because it's sort of got that haunting feeling of a time, just before you were around. It's a few years before I was born, so it's familiar, but at the same time, like, proper weird, innit? And there's graffiti on it, look, someone's written Enoch there. I don't know, it's spelt wrong, so I assume it's about Enoch Powell, and what they've done is they've spelled it wrong. He spelled it wrong as Bob Ollie to sort of mock racists and their spelling, so that's good, innit? But it could also stand for, like, the Emirates National Oil Company, in which case he could be massively in support of the oil trade, but that seems unlikely. There's a man there closely staring at a kid on the toilet. It's a bit unsettling. And another man with his newspaper behind his back. Probably the Express. Sure why he's doing that. There's a kid pissing on his leg, but he's still just protecting his newspaper. Protect your friggin' calf, mate. There's a fucking little shitty kid pissing on it. I don't like the Geordie stuff on it, to be honest, as well. Brew nail, and I I think that's what I don't like about it. All of this, the McCanny Geordie shit of it, just makes us feel like, oh no, man, fucking hell. I just think it's like almost resonant of a type of Geordie that I'm not really familiar with. It seems almost mythical and not like it's called the Westo Netty. This like Netty's a Geordie word for toilet that nobody I ever met in my life has used other than ironically. And it's like, oh, don't we all call it the netty? No, toilet usually. Usually just the toilet. I will say, I'm going for a piss. You might say that, but nobody goes, oh, I'm going to the netty. It reminds me of all those Larn Yassel Geordie books, you know, where people go, this is how they talk. But don't talk like that. Especially not in South Shields, maybe in like Ashington, where it's proper, you know. But down here, people don't say netty, really. They probably say brown ale as well. And I don't like the little kid. Look at him, the little fucking bastard. He's like that type of 70s kids you see in documentaries about the 70s, you know, that don't exist anymore. Where he's like, well, they fucking come round here and I sorted them out, didn't I? I fucking sorted them out. They don't, like, nobody talks like that anymore. It's a very 70s accent that I imagine this kid's got. And he also reminds me of a kid called Stephen Brown, who lived in the Naughty Boys home near my house and once assaulted me in the street with a load of raspberry licorice laces, which he folded up and belted us with them, but he didn't really do anything back to him because he once burnt his house down, and it's out of my league, that.
Yeah, I think it's just, as like a Geordie comic, I hate being categorised as a Geordie comic, you know? I am aware that the very subject of this show is playing into the hands somewhat. And I think most of us do. So what I've done is, luckily, there's many comedy experts out there who review shows, and I have no problem with the review process, by the way. I used to want to be a music journalist. I love a good review. I don't have a problem with that if they're well written and incisive and make an interesting point, maybe even about the wider culture. And there's a comedy website called Chortle that a lot of comics read. Nobody who isn't. A lot of comics read. And what I've done, just to see what sort of wisdom they're going to impass, I've went on there and I've made a list for all of the Geordie comics I could find on there. There's a lot not on there. And all the Geordie comics I could find on there. Just for quotes you could use on your next poster. I hope you find this useful.
Geordie, 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 accent, Geordie, accent, Geordie, accent, Geordie, accent, Geordie, accent, Tyneside, accent, accent, Turkish, Geordie, chirpy, Geordie, Italian, Newcastle, 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 Geordie, 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 regional humour, Middlesbrough, Middlesbrough. Pat, that's your time. Pat, you're going to miss the train again. Sunderland, Sunderland, Northumbrian, South Shields, Northeast, Northeasterner, Geordie, accent he really should have.
It's odd that, isn't it? There was a couple of comedians from around here who they didn't mention it for. There's a lad called David Callahan, who's a comedian and a playwright. He's very wordy and clever, is David. Ask him, he'll tell you. And they didn't have him on. I'm assuming they went, but he knows loads of words. Surely he's from somewhere else. And the other one that didn't have on was Chubby Brown, who they went, well, he's racist, isn't he? Of course he's from there, you don't even say that. I always think, by the way, that there should be more racist comedy on television. Now, I know that sounds controversial, hear us out. And I think we're seeing it now with all of these so-called counter-riots. They're bored, aren't they? They're bored. We should have more racist comedy on telly, keep them in the house. The last thing, as it's being shown, we need is bored racists all over the place. Put loads of stuff on for them. Oh, there's Love Thy Neighbour. There's Jim Davidson. Brilliant, lads. Stay in. Could have a whole channel. Call it, I don't know, ITV2, for example. There's loads of, a weird amount of comedians from around here, and I don't know why. We've got 2 different X Factor winners around here. 2 of Little Mix and Joe McKeldry. I don't know what it is about this area, because I always think of us as quite a shy people. And I wonder whether in quite a straight environment, whether quite a shy environment, anybody who isn't that feels the need to express it more. That could be it, couldn't it? You feel the need to express it. Because people who fit in are, without exception, total cunts, aren't they? But I do worry that I'm a local character. I love a local character. There's a woman who I've seen for years just walking about Jarrow, looks a bit like Elvis, has Elvis hair, and I see her once every 3 or 4 years and I go, oh, that Elvis woman's still alive. Love that. But I do worry I'm one. I wear silver shoes sometimes. There's no way I'm not walking down the street and people aren't going, there's that fat lad with the ginger shoes. I've noticed I can't wait for a metro without walking back and forwards up the station. I can't wait patiently for anything. They go, I'm worried they're going up. There he goes, silver shoes walking again. What's he like? What's he like? And I worry that I'm one of those men you sometimes see. You know those men? Like you don't see him very often and you never think about him. And then every few months, oh, there's that man, I see him. He's got a forehead with a bit more of a slope than normal, so you remember him. I worry I'm one of them. I worry I'm a man you sometimes see. I've softened on Bob Ollie though. Like I think it's quite a nice picture, and the hang-ups are mine. And I looked into it, and Bob Ollie's a man, very working class man who's got to travel the world and on his painting, and that's brilliant, isn't it? Even if it's not my taste, who am I to say that? Tell you what though, it's not just Bob. There's loads of famous people from South Tyneside.
Steve, Cram, Craig, Russell, Catherine Cooks and Ridley Scott. Big heck.
I'm only kidding, I'm not going to do a song parody. I've got too much respect for me and you. There's loads of comedians from here. I'm thinking of like 13 or 14 ones who are doing like really well. Some of them doing incredibly well. Milliken, Ramsey, Cook, Seymour Mays. Some of them just like really talented and it's, I don't know why it is. And there's one I hadn't heard of who I've recently found out about. He was a music hall comedian called Wee Georgie Wood. Now George was less than 5 foot tall. He was like 4'9", I think. And he was really famous. He was friends with Laurel and Hardy and Charlie Chaplin. I don't know what Charlie Chaplin saw in a man whose act was that he looked and acted very like a small boy. I don't know. Sad story, like he was very famous and he became very rich and he was lonely though. He never married, and this is a direct quote. He came close to marrying once. But the mother of the girl said, and direct quote, she said, let's face it, Georgie, you're a midget. And that's cruel as fuck, isn't it? And he walked away sad, and he could never tell that story without crying, and I felt sorry for him, and I thought, how famous is he? He's really famous. He was on Desert Island Discs in 1961. I listened to it, he's very posh, like a lot of these people. He left Jarrow very young. He said, I like that, be on a desert island. And very posh. And I thought, I'll listen to this, I'll talk about, I'll maybe play one of the songs he chose to finish the show. It's a nice idea. I looked at it. Georgie, man. He's only went and picked Al Jolson. 31 years after the riots, 1960. In this day and age, with fucking Little Britain being taken off telly, you're picking Al Jolson, Georgie, for fuck's sake. By the way, don't let Little Britain fool you. When they're like, oh, we didn't know. They knew. Because I was in a Spice Girls tribute act, that's true. That I was in an all-male Spice Girls tribute act for a few months in the 90s. I was Scary Spice. I was a 17-year-old idiot from South Tyneside. I knew not a black hole. Come on, David. You know better than that, right? But, how, Georgie, man, I cannot believe you picked Al Jolson. In this day and age, with what's going on in the world right now, you pick that in the past, you fucking take. You wouldn't like it if I walked around on my knees, would you? You fucking hell. I'm sorry, I'm disappointed in him. It's not a very good song either. I listen to it. It's called Keep Smiling at Trouble. It goes, keep smiling at trouble, for trouble's a bubble. It doesn't make sense. Keep smiling at trouble, for trouble's a bubble, and bubbles will soon fly away. Don't try that on an assailant, that is not good advice. And if you go to Lager and they try to nick your chips, give them your chips. Don't just go. They fucked up Muhammad Ali, give them your chips. Don't just smile at them. Stephen Brown comes to you out of his naughty boys home, right? Gonna whip you with some laces. Don't just go. He won't go. He won't go. I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase, what the fuck are you smiling at? But it never stops a fight. Sad thing is, he was really famous, did Desert Island Discs. Everything, like Head of the Water Rats, big star. There's very little of him online now. One voice clip, one picture of him having a bit of a sing-song. Desert Island Discs. There's more of my stuff online than there is one of the biggest musical stars of the first half of the century. And false modesty prevents me from going, hey, up yours, Georgie, I'm South Tyneside, teenage rock and roll machine, fucking yeah. Would never do that. Catherine Cookson, she's famous, isn't she? She's from around, not as famous as she was. They used to call around here Cookson Country, and people quickly lost interest in her. It's so strange that she was massive, Massive. For 17 years, she wrote all those stories where they're like, I'm a poor girl from South... I mean, she moved out of South Shields when she was about 20, lived in Hastings all her life. I'm a poor girl from downstairs in South Shields. I am a rich man, you are... You know, they're all fucking rubbish. And she was, for 17 years, the most borrowed author from libraries in Britain, until just around the time she died, then she quickly fell off the cliff, metaphorically. Makes you think, doesn't it? I think she was the one borrowing them all. It's clever marketing. She was going around, can I take these books out? Oh, you've got 10 Catherine Cookson books. Mrs. Bookson. Yeah. Senior saw Ellen Wilkinson wrote a book about Jarrow called The Town That Was Murdered. The Town That Was Murdered. And that led to the Jarrow March. Now, if you don't know Jarrow, that's the one thing you will know about it, the Jarrow March. For those of you who don't know about the Jarrow March, I've studied this extensively, I'll fill you in. Now, years ago, in the 20s or 30s or something, Jarrow had high unemployment, unlike the thriving metropolis it is today. So what they did is, they got loads of them together, and they did this massive walk all the way to London. Now, they didn't all get there. Some of them died, sadly. Some of them had to go back home to sign on. But eventually they got to London, they knocked on the Prime Minister's door, and they said, oh, Maggie, whatever, can we have some jobs? And they went, no, fuck off. So they did. They went all the way back home, didn't have any jobs. Sad story, isn't it? Sad story. Apart from it's not the whole story. A lot of people always say it didn't work, the Jarrow March, the Jarrow Crusade, as we sometimes call it, didn't work. And that's not 100% true. A lot of people don't know this, but as a result of the Jarrow March, they built Team Valley Trading Estate in Gateshead, 5 or 6 miles away. And the people in Jarrow were like, what the fuck's this? How am I going to get to work? And they said, can you not drive? And they said, no. It's like the 1920s or 30s, but the working man doesn't have a car in these days. And if we do, it's one of those wooden ones you have to walk in front of with a flag in the Beano. How are we going to get to work? Well, can you not... No, I can't get the metro. The metros don't exist until 1980, according to Metro the Musical. How are we going to get to work? And for once, the politicians had a good point on this one. For once, they had a good point. They went, how are we going to get to work? And went, well, you walk to London. Palmer's Shipyard in Jarrow. Which, by the way, Stephen Hepburn, you're on the shipbuilding committee. You don't seem to have opened a new shipyard. Weird that. Palmer's Shipyard was closed down. Killed the town for the second time. The town that was murdered twice. And the worst part about it is they didn't just close it down, they sold it to a rival who made a deal that since they bought it, there couldn't be shipbuilding on the Tyne for 40 years in Jarrow. 2 generations of skilled people just wiped out. Nothing next to do. And I'm gutted personally because I don't know about you, but I think we all need to see that Royal Yacht soon, and we could have done it at a proper discount. The town that was murdered twice. And like most sequels, except Godfather and Grease 2, where does the Parlin go? Pring! This one was worse. I'm not judging them, but the twin towns of South Tyneside, it's 3 of them. Wuppertal, one of the most beautiful towns in Germany. It's got a sort of metro system, but rather than on tracks, it's actual full trains, but on a sort of cable car system, the only one in the world. It's spectacular, and they're also twinned with 2 places in France called Epinay and Noisy-le-Sec, which I looked into. They're not even towns, they're suburbs of Paris, so 3 times a year they get 2 holidays in Paris, 1 in Germany. I don't know what's in it for the people from Paris. I don't know how they saw South Tyneside. Went, oh, come here. Oh, we've got a wonderful pedestrian tunnel, and they turn up and go, as they say, yeah, they used to be the longest wooden escalators in the world. And then they're like, oh, but they do not even work. Like, yeah, but they're pretty fucking long, aren't they? It's no the Seine, is it?
Hello, landlubber. Here be a tale, a devastating tale of the rocks known as the Black Middens. Oh, they're the Black Middens, they should be forbidden. Oh no, I'm not kidding, I'm afraid they're hidden. Zinedine Zidane, and if you should hit them, you're fucked.
Yeah, midden means dump, like, or the Black Middens, like the devil's dump. That's a folk tale around here where they say the Black Middens were caused when the devil threw loads of rubbish in the Tyne to stop the coal trade. I don't know whether he wanted the coal for his furnaces or whatever. And it sort of worked in a way, but then 1970s, there was no more accidents after that. From the mid-70s, there was better lighthousing around there, no accidents on the Black Middens, better improvements on ships. 1970s, the devil thought, I better have another idea if I want to fuck these mines up. 1979, here comes Maggie bloody Thatcher. Oh, God. People around here, man. Still, quite rightly, but still furious about her. Honestly, if she gets in again, people are going to fucking kick off. Kick off. Maggie Thatcher. Shut the mines down with nothing to replace them. Terrible woman. Terrible woman. Invented Mr. Whippy though. Did you know that? Some people do. She invented Mr. Whippy, and I wonder, maybe that's why she snatched all that milk. Mines shut down, the town that was killed 3 times. Bright spots. We invented the lifeboat. I say we, not as a team. One of us did. William Woodhave he was called, but he couldn't patent it. So he was too poor to afford the patent, so someone else got all the money for that. What it was, there was a lot of deaths around the seas of Britain, and a call went out, we need a way to save people. When the ships crashed, we need a way to save people in the sea. Nobody could think of an idea. And then Woodhave and this other bloke both separately went, lifeboats. And what I don't get is why that needed invented. Like, what else was it going to be? Oh, we need a way to get out quickly into the sea, to go to a different bit of the sea. And a couple of years later, someone goes, a boat. What were they doing before? Just doing some Jesus walking on water or something. The lifeboat's in Shields. First lifeboat. In South Shields it is, quite near the beach. You can go and see it. I say you can go and see it. You used to be able to see it. Now what they've done is, they've redone it. They've done the lifeboat up and replaced almost all of the original parts. So now you can see a lifeboat. It's not the original one. It's like the HMS Sugar Babes, isn't it? I'm not doing these little asides live, by the way. I recorded these before the rest of the show. I just fucking acting, you know. And like always, the rich don't care about the poor. When Ellen Wilkinson was highlighting the problems of South Tyneside, they were told, Jarrow must work out its own salvation. Left to rot. And they did sport, entertainment, drinking, looking after number one, and out of nowhere, the Brexit vote, everyone was disappointed, going, what the fuck is this? We thought it was a racially harmonised town. I don't know, some of the Brexit was people voting racially, and that's terrible. Some of it was people who felt the government had lost them, and they have 3 times. And it's the same as 1919, is it? It's the poor manipulated to work against each other's interests by the rich. They blame foreign people for the actions of the rich white people. Boris Johnson says Britain isn't racist, but he also thinks he isn't racist, so he's not the best judge. It's the Black Lives Matter thing, isn't it? Black Lives Matter, I think, yeah, they do, and all those people are saying, oh, all lives matter, but the people who are saying that are proof that theirs probably doesn't that much. And I think what we need as working class white people, if that's what you are, is to realise we have more in common with black people than we do with rich white people. That's when we'll be able to change things, to realise which of these people are going to be on our side, and it's never the rich. Jarrow must work out his own salvation. Now I know some of you are going, oh, for fuck's sake, what's he on about this for? Is this virtue signalling? Yeah! Sometimes I think there's not enough virtue signalling out there. If you think you've got a virtue, fucking signal it, because I tell you what, there's a lot of total cunt signalling going on. White America at the moment, white America's having a 4-year tantrum. Honestly, white America, you're looking like little children. Be careful, stop doing it, or Donald Trump will start trafficking you. What about the cops who were murdered, people are saying? Why am I... Look, it is sad when anyone's murdered, but the difference when the police are murdered is the people get arrested and tried for it. What about the cops who are murdered? As if that's a great argument. What you're saying is, well, the cops are just as well off murdering people as murderers are. What you're saying is, hey, we can't expect police to be better than murderers. The poster for this show, it's me done up as a statue in South Shields, a statue known as the Weebles, a conversation piece. It's just a man waiting for ages. And I did that ages ago, a few weeks ago. Turns out I'm a prophet now. Everything's about statues, innit? Everything's about statues. The right love statues. They love flawless heroes. They dream of them, even though they're not possible. I think that's why they bloody love eugenics. They've got this idea of a perfect person in their head. You know, they love this flawless hero. That's why they can't hear both sides of the Churchill thing. They go, no, Churchill was perfect. When Churchill did a good thing and shit, loads of horrible things. I think what we need to do is have no statues. Wouldn't that be brilliant? No statues, right? No heroes. Everyone does good things, everyone does bad things. We'll weigh them up like that. We don't pretend anyone's perfect. Imagine there was no statues. Alright, John Lennon. Imagine there was no statues, no heroes. I tell you what, the Savile thing wouldn't have happened. You know when people go, well, why didn't anyone look into him? Oh, we thought he was too brilliant. If we judge nobody is too brilliant, these things won't happen again. Gray's Monument in Newcastle. Protesters out that yesterday. Protesters out that yesterday thinking it was going to get damaged, even though he's an abolitionist and nothing to do with any war. But no, I think black people will pull this down. Black people famously hate the abolition of the slave trade. There was a group there called the Defenders of Newcastle. The Defenders of Newcastle. And I've got to say, I'm really disappointed that they've managed to drag Philippe Albert and John Beresford into this. Abolition of the slave trade. They want to preserve history, but they don't know any of it. They want to attack police because they're angry at police. They want to attack police because they're angry at people attacking the police. It doesn't make any sense. But on the plus side, like I was saying with the racist comedy, the more time they spend standing near statues, the less time they spend consuming child pornography. Like, I've only got one camera, so I've had and that's a phone. So what statues is there around here? I wondered if there's any problematic statues. There's a lovely one of a man called Kirkpatrick, who's a man who rescued people from a war with a donkey. That's good, isn't it? First, when I say a war with a donkey, he took a donkey on the battlefield and rescued them. He got shot doing that. I don't mean we were at war with a donkey. You know, we weren't like, fucking hell, distracting with a carrot and getting over the top. There's a woman called Dolly Peel, who was like a local poet and fishwife who protected people from the press gang back in the day. That's a nice statue, isn't it? I don't know why people are so scared of Julia Sawala. That's right, doing a joke about press gang in 2020. There's weirdly a sort of little metal one of Sarah Milligan, but she's a nice woman in my few interactions with her, and I can't really rip that down because there's a good chance I'd look jealous. And there's one of Palmer in Jarrow, but he was a big businessman and he started the shipyard, and he's probably a bit of a prick, but he helped a lot of people, probably did some bad things, but I can't get to that anyway because I have to get the metro and I've not got my face mask yet. So yeah, I've looked at it and it turns out, as far as I can work out, there's not loads of statues around here of slave traders, so that's good, but in a way it is a bit disappointing because it would be class to pull a statue down, wouldn't it? But when I think about it, there's not really any statues of like slave traders around here, or I don't know, like maybe somebody who went out of their way to build an empire that caused the deaths of millions in some of the biggest genocides in history. It's none. Probably the most famous person in the history of this area is the Venerable Bede. He was a monk, right, and ages ago. I used to think when I was a kid, I used to think it was called the Vulnerable Bede, but I was 9, and I said, the Vulnerable Bede, and Mr. Finley, my teacher, went, I think it's the Venerable Bede. And it turns out, I've looked into it, I was right, he's dead now, so another victory from me. He invented, among other things, the word Englishman. Imagine that. He invented the word Englishman. Without Venerable Bede, there's a good chance that Rule Britannia might not exist for your dad to listen to when he ejaculates. He's the father of English history, they call him. He's responsible for the calendar we use now. He didn't invent the AD thing, but he popularised it in this country. AD, Anno Domini, since the year of Jesus' birth or something, I think it means. And that is a weird system anyway, isn't it? Thinking about it, like, Christianity's not huge anymore in this country comparatively. Loads of people aren't. And we'll go, yeah, that's when we should measure time from. Should we do it from when Jesus was born? Yes, but we should historically make it about 3 years out. We should start measuring time from about 3 years before Jesus was born, and we've all went, I will keep that forever. There's a place called Bede's World as well. Bede's World in Jarrow. I was so excited about it as a kid when they're like, we're having a new place called Bede's World. I thought it was going to be, honestly thought it was going to be a monk-themed Disney World, and I got there and it's just a monk-themed Monk's World. I'm not even in the same room for this one. And in Bede's Monastery, the oldest known ever English Bible was made. Jarrow must work out its own salvation. And even without the fight's gone, can you blame anybody? There's a managed decline purposely done against South Tyneside. 3 falls, 3 deaths, 3 falls, a knockout in it. 1932 Reform Act. 1932 Reform Act, also responsible. Earl Grey did that monument. Yeah, we're going to pull it down. Since then, South Shields is the only parliamentary constituency that's existed since that time that have never returned a Conservative candidate.
It's not even me, this one.
So, we don't vote Conservative.
Neither is this.
We don't vote Labour, so they take it for granted. The Conservatives don't care, the Labour take it for granted.
I'm not me either. I'm Carrie.
Some of you might be going, you've not even touched on all of South Tyneside. You've mentioned Jarrow and South Shields, but what about Hebburn and Bolton? Bolton's got the most visited Asda in Britain. Nah, I've not against that. I've never lived in them as far as I don't. Bolton's got a big Asda. Heburn's a pretty good way to get a Jarrow if you're engaged there. So like all places, it has its problems. All places have different problems. A lot of ours aren't of our making and they're there. And it's also very far from most of my work. Like I spend a lot of time, I don't drive, on megabuses or the cheapest trains I can find, going up to Scotland or going across to Manchester or down past Yorkshire into the Midlands, sometimes to London. It's not a handy place for gigs. There's only one real regular comedy club in Newcastle. You go, why don't you move, Lee? Why are you still here? Well, I know where everything is. You know what I mean? If someone asks directions and goes, where's that street? I go, it's over there. I live within walking distance of 8 different supermarkets. You can't put a price on that sort of handiness. And like all my stuff's here. Well, I mean, what we're gonna imagine it'd be pretty daft, wouldn't it, if I lived in Stoke and all my stuff's here and like it was bedtime. Like, oh, I'm tired now, I better turn in. Just get a train back to South Shields. Doesn't make any sense, does it? That's why I live here. That's where my house is, honestly. By the way, if you've enjoyed this, or if you haven't, but are generous and fancy chucking some money my way, I'd really love that. I'm making one of these a month. It's a very new thing. I don't think many people have done things like this before, where they're writing a whole show a month and then not previewing it and just throwing it out there, full-length show, seeing what happens, right? It means there's going to be ups and downs in it, of course there is. I've not previewed it. If I was doing this at the Edinburgh Fringe, I'd do a number of previews before that, and by the end of the Fringe it would be. So this is, you know, this is very much an experimental thing. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, if you could please go to coffee.com, that's ko/fi.com/Lee Kyle, and just, if you've got any money to spare, chuck some over. That would be absolutely brilliant. Like, all of my work's gone because of the old COVID, you know, that'd be brilliant. Or patreon.com/Lee Kyle, have a look at that. I have loads of stuff on there. I have loads of old shows, podcasts, a book I wrote about when I was a wrestler called Spandex Ballet. Yes, it is a good title. Loads of things on there. I really try hard to make it worth your while. There's different tiers you can be on. You get different stuff at each different tier. For example, even just the £3 tier, you get at least one podcast a month, but always more than that. You get access to download all of the shows I made during isolation, not just these ones, but also I've made 5 family shows so far. So if you've got kids, you can watch a man be I was going to say inappropriate in front of your kids, but not in that way. Look, clearly not in that way. I wouldn't put it out for a start. So yeah, if you can check that out, coffee.com/Lee Kyle or patreon.com/Lee Kyle. I'd massively appreciate if you could spare it. That would be really great. Thank you very much. The next show is called, it's difficult because it's called Abramacabra, but the problem is, for the title of the work, you have to pronounce one of the words wrong. So it's really Abramacabre, but that doesn't rhyme. So it's like Abramacabra or Arb Macabre. It's about a mixture of humans' darkness. So, you know, like, I think humans, we have a fascination for things that are a bit like, well, why do you like that? Well, that is really like the unsettling and the dark and the scary. And it's a mixture of that and a show about the time I was mistaken for a magician, which I've never felt more insulted. So what did Jarrow do? So Jarrow worked out its own salvation, and the salvation was the thing it had to be. It was half given up. It was comedy and drinking and singing and going out and staying in and trying to not get murdered for your chips and living a life like every town of its ilk. Because what choice do you have? And they're just towns. Jarrow, South Shields, Hebburn, Bolton, just towns. No different from thousands of other towns. They're not special. Unless you're from here and all your stuff's here. They're not special, but 25 pence a pint, you know? This next bit I'm going to show you, and near the end, it's an old bit of stand-up. I did it in a show a few years ago, and it's the reason I did this show, because I watched this and there's stuff I want to talk about. It's about how many comedians there are from South Tyneside, and how I don't know why there is, and it's my favourite bit of stand-up I've ever done. Now, I don't think it's the funniest bit I've ever done, and certainly the show I did it at, it either worked really well or just not at all, but I find it a very satisfying bit of stand-up. And it's done with a crowd, which looks weird now. I filmed it, it's available on my Patreon, this show, and I was going to film the show at Washington Arts Centre the week after this, but I worried about ticket sales, to be honest. So it's filmed at a coffee shop called True Coffee Shop in Eton in Newcastle, which isn't there anymore. And you'll notice that there is a little bag in shot. I didn't realise till too late.
There's loads of reasons I shouldn't be on telly, right? Sometimes I say horrible things. I've got no unique selling point. Overweight, plain looking, not that funny. It's fair. But ultimately the main reason is, I think the main reason that's never happened is where I'm from. Like, I'm not bothered, but ultimately they don't let people from South Tyneside be on television, do they? That's the thing.
Sarah Milliken.
What?
Sarah Milliken.
Well, Sarah Milliken, obviously, but she's fucking brilliant, isn't she? Of course, Sarah Milliken. But other than Sarah Milliken, I can't think of a single other comedian from South Tyneside who they'd let be on the telly.
Well, what about Chris Ramsey? Comedy Central seem really keen on him. They've given him his own show.
Yeah, fair enough. Chris Ramsey, you can't argue with that, right? Sarah Milliken, but other than Sarah Milliken and Chris Ramsey, they just don't let comedians from South Tyneside be on telly, and that's just the end of it.
Oh, what about Jason Cook?
Fair enough, Jason Cook, 2 series of a sitcom and a Christmas special, lots of other telly stuff. Very good, you know. Right, fair enough. But other than Sarah Milligan, Chris Ramsey and Jason Cook, they just don't let comedians from South Tyneside be successful, and it's not fair.
And Seymour Mace.
Fair enough, Seymour Mace as well. He nearly won Best Show at Edinburgh a couple of years ago. But fine, other than Sarah Milligan, Chris Ramsey, Jason Cook and Seymour Mace, there's no other comedians from South Tyneside who they let be successful, and it's just not fair.
Carl Hutchinson, he's got himself a tour, selling very well.
You're fair of Carl Hutchinson. Carl went to my school, so I'm technically only the second best comedian from my school. But other than Sarah Milligan, Chris Ramsey, Jason Cook, Seymour Mace and Carl Hutchinson, you can't possibly think of another comedian from South Tyneside who they let get on, and it's not fair.
And John Whale, he lives 2 streets away from you. He's sort of like you, but slightly cleverer and slightly more well-regarded.
Fuck off, Jerry Adams. Right. All right, John Whale. John Whale's brilliant. He's a fucking unheralded genius. He went to my school as well, so 3rd. Right, but other than Sarah Milligan, Chris Ramsey, Jason Cook, Seymour Mace, Carl Hutchinson and John Whale, there's no other comedians from South Tyneside that let be successful. What can I do?
And Keir Kyle, your own son, he's only done 5 gigs and they've already asked him to be on the radio.
Look, that's fucking true. My son did 5 gigs and they put him on the radio, right? Just because he's got good hair and you can't even fucking say it on the radio. And don't get us wrong, I was on as well, but I fucking worked for it. He just turned it and went, I'm 17, they went, that'll fucking do. And by the way, I'm not bitter, but if there's any young parents in here, people with young kids, or people who are planning on having kids one day, bit of advice from me, right? We raised Kia very liberally. We always talk things through with them, you know, give him lots of experiences. Never once raised my hand to him, and he's grown into a swaggering arsehole. Take advice from me, I was wrong, hit your kids. Right, but other than Sarah Milligan, Chris Ramsey, Jason Cook, Seymour Mace, Carl Hutchinson, John Whale, and that little prick who won't move out, right? It's almost impossible to be a comedian from South Tyneside and become successful. It's just not fair.
Mate, I think you've forgotten the most famous one.
Don't think
Lots
so.
of people don't know this, but Eric Idle was actually born in South Tyneside.
Eric Idle doesn't ring a bell. I've never heard of him.
You know exactly who he is. Eric Idle, out of Monty Python's Flying Circus.
I don't know who they are.
Well, I think you do. Because everyone in here knows that the last 5 minutes has been a direct rip-off of their What Have the Romans Ever Done For Us?
They'll never notice. They'll never know. Shit. It's true that there's a bit in there where people are going, this lad's dead bitter, and then you go, oh no, the joke is that there's loads of them and it's all his fault. It's not fair, is it? It's not fair. I can't use the South Tyneside thing as a crutch, can I?
Turns out there's nothing holding you back at all except talent and hard work.
Bollocks, innit?
Mrs. Thatcher, do you weep? Do you wake, Mrs. Thatcher, in your sleep? Do you weep like a sad willow on your Marks and Spencer's pillow? Are your tears molten steel? Do you weep? Do you wake with 3 million on your brain? Are you sorry that they'll never work again? When you're dressing in your blue, do you see the waiting queue? Do you weep, Mrs. Thatcher? Do you weep? Not my words. The words of Adrian Mole. And people say he's just a big pair of tits.
Before the journey that awaits us all, no man becomes so wise that he has no